It seems like lately we've been experiencing something of a trend with major AAA studios releasing highly anticipated games, each of which promised as the next big thing in gaming, only to then turn out as a highly derivative imitation or recreation, splicing together existing popular gameplay mechanics into one singular hybrid formula. About a week ago, as of the time of recording, Riot Games, the highly acclaimed developer and publisher of the internationally popular game League of Legends, finally released their newest highly promoted title by the name of Valorant. Odds are if you're watching this video you've already seen more than a couple YouTube videos and Twitch streams of Valorant. Every content creator and streamer worth their salt has been advocating for this game or showcasing it in some shape or form. And even the mainstream gaming press was referring to this game as the next CSGO. The next up-and-coming game to completely revolutionize the industry and become an instant hit. And well, that didn't exactly happen. For the first several hours of the game's launch, the servers appeared to be completely down, with many players unable to get into the game until the developers rushed out a hotfix, and let the masses through the gate into the world of Valorant. So, to get right to the point, what is Valorant? In the developer's own words, Valorant is your global competitive stage. It's a 5v5 tactical shooter matchup to plant or defuse the spike in a 1 life per round game mode. More than guns and bullets, you'll choose an agent armed with adaptive, swift, and lethal abilities that create opportunities to let your gunplay shine. Creativity is your greatest weapon. It's ironic that they end the game's official description by talking about creativity, when it's a lack of creativity that proves to be the most crippling flaw holding Valorant back. Valorant is a team-based tactical hero shooter, one that tries very strongly, perhaps too strongly, to emulate Counter-Strike at every turn. The game currently consists of only 2 game modes. Now, if you saw my last video, you know that I've already ripped Crucible apart for having only 2 game modes and a third more casual game mode, but Valorant doesn't even have a third game mode yet, not really. Currently, it only includes literally 2 modes, Spike and Spike Rush. The game also has a third option, Custom Game, but since Custom Game is mainly intended just to act as a private lobby option for pre-made groups, and doesn't itself contain any distinguishing features, I don't count Custom Match as its own mode, but rather a social feature. The same logic applies to the Training Arena, which is only accessible in single-player mode, and is intended to familiarize new players with the game's core mechanics. One classic CSGO feature, which I was surprised to see absent here, since so many hero shooters like Overwatch, TF2, and even Evolve have included, was an offline practice with bots mode. I don't know about you, but for me, having a single-player training arena is fine, but it also feels to me like the bottom of the barrel in terms of being an effective way to teach new players how to play your game, because no small training area filled with stationary dummies is likely going to be able to replicate the kind of situations you're going to end up experiencing in the actual game. Allowing players to play on the normal multiplayer maps in a private match filled with friendly and enemy bots allows them to quickly become accustomed to how the average online match will play out. I and most other people, I think, naturally don't expect bots to be anywhere as skilled nor intelligent as real players, but it's easier to adjust to playing an FPS when you're facing moving AI targets rather than a stationary bullseye target in an isolated training map. So long story short, the training mode sucks. And the only way to learn it is to get your ass beat again and again until you either get better or you quit and uninstall the game. The problem here is, unless your goal is to emulate Dark Souls, this probably isn't the best way to handle new players. So, regarding the 2 multiplayer modes, Spike and Spike Rush. Spike is your standard CSGO bomb defusal mode. The attacking team has a set amount of time to invade the defending team's territory and place a bomb in one of the specified zones, then guard the bomb until it detonates. The defending team obviously has to stop this from happening. Just like in CSGO, if a player dies during one of the rounds, they have to wait until the next round to respawn. The match ends when either the bomb has been detonated, or when one of the 2 teams has been entirely eliminated. That said, if the attacking team plants the bomb and then dies, the defending team still has to defuse the bomb before it detonates. If the bomb detonates before the defending team manages to defuse it and the attacking team is already dead, the match ends in a stalemate. At the start of each Spike round, players have access to a buy menu, almost identical in function to the one in CSGO, except perhaps a bit more expansive in terms of the number of available weapons and tools you can choose to buy. Players are given about a minute in their spawn rooms to buy their weapons and ideally communicate tactics with each other, and then the match begins. Characters referred to in-game as agents each have unique character abilities, most of which are on lengthy timed cooldowns. Although each character does also have their own ultimate ability, which can be unlocked by eliminating enemies or by picking up these specific ultimate charge orbs scattered sparsely around the map. I played mostly as a support character in the game by the name of Sage, since naturally when it comes to hero shooters like Overwatch, Paladins, and even Team Fortress 2, I've always been more of a support player, so naturally I gravitated to that role again in Valorant. The difference between Valorant and the other aforementioned games is that even as a support, you're oftentimes just as often in the front lines as anyone else. The hero abilities are almost a secondary consideration compared with the main focus, being that of your own shooting accuracy. Now I'll openly say I'm dreadful at DPS characters. I used to be better long ago during my TF2 days when I could run around as a Huntsman Sniper or a Cloak and Dagger Spy, but over the past few years I've spent so much time playing as tanks and support characters, it feels weird to play a game that revolves completely around DPS gameplay. Lucky for me, Valorant does a decent job of matchmaking, placing me alongside and against other terrible players. It could just be that I've gotten lucky. As of recording, I've only played about a dozen matches, but I've yet to have a match where I felt like our team was just completely and unbearably outmatched by the enemy team. Now, I've already addressed Spike, so let's talk about Spike Rush. Spike Rush is easily far more enjoyable to play than Spike itself, whereas a single Spike match can last easily over half an hour. A Spike Rush match oftentimes only lasts about 10 to 12 minutes. Everything is far faster paced. In Spike Rush, instead of allowing players access to a buy menu, every player on both teams starts with the same exact weapon, the weapon itself being randomly selected by the game. You could all start with a pistol, a semi-auto, a shotgun, a heavy weapon, really anything. The only thing you know for sure is that you will all have the same weapon, as well as your melee knife. Also, instead of manually having one attacking player carry the bomb to the zone in Spike Rush, all attacking players automatically have the bomb on them, allowing anyone to place the device. This effectively changes the mode from being a guard the VIP type mode to a more frantic, almost chaotic rush. I've seen some criticisms of Spike Rush for this very reason, but hey, what's the point in having a second alternate game mode aimed at more casual players if you don't want it to differ at all from the main game mode in any conceivable way? The reason I think Riot added both Spike and Spike Rush is to appeal to both the hardcore and more casual FPS demographics fairly equally. And as with any two groups, one group is inherently angered whenever someone in power gives some ounce of appeasement to the other side. I don't say that to try to undercut those who feel Valorant should be a hardcore-only game. It definitely was marketed as one, but at the same time, I'm not going to cry myself to sleep over the fact that people have another mode to enjoy. And I'll be honest, I enjoy both Spike and Spike Rush, but I do kind of enjoy Rush a bit more, because the slower pace of Spike tends to deteriorate to an almost snail-like one at times. One thing the game does really well that I do want to give it credit for is its fairly clean UI. A lot of other games have a tendency to clutter up the screen unnecessarily, and when you're playing an online FPS PvP game, it's important that you're able to focus on what's important, and Valorant is pretty good about allowing you to do just that. Games like Overwatch and TF2, especially TF2, would be almost impossible to enjoy as a viewer given the flood of visual information at times during intense team fights. Valorant very clearly wanted to make itself very watchable as an esports title, though whether it'll even sustain enough popularity to become an esports game is highly questionable at the moment. Another credit to the game is the visual aesthetic of the maps. While the map design itself leaves a lot to be desired at times, the actual art style isn't all that bad. I do think the graphics come off a little bit as a bit dated, almost as if they were created using the Source 1 engine, just like CSGO itself, and the colors are at times a bit generic, but there are one or two maps that do stand out as decent. The soft tones on many of the textures do invoke memories of Sea of Thieves, except for the fact that the actual graphical quality of Sea of Thieves was far higher. The visual tone overall just feels conflicted, like the game itself is torn over whether it wants to be realistic or unrealistic. This is a criticism that I made in my last video regarding Amazon's video game Crucible, and it feels equally true if not even more applicable here. Now let's talk about the holy trinity of sins this FPS is guilty of. Firstly, the movement in this game is completely awful. The movement here is so poor it almost feels like I'm playing one of those free-to-play FPS mobile games on my iPad. Worse yet, many of the guns here in Valorant feel almost identical to one another. It's very difficult to tell the differences between them, and it doesn't help that on the buy menu, the game will only show the weapon description text in a nearly microscopic-sized text font. However, without a doubt, the most unforgivable sin this game is most certainly guilty of is its truly abysmal anti-cheat system. The Riot anti-cheat system currently in place is completely ineffectual at detecting actual cheaters. And not only that, but many users have reported that the anti-cheat system also functions effectively as spyware once downloaded onto your computer. Apparently it's not enough that Riot operates a fairly large development team in China and is owned by Tencent, one of the largest Chinese multimedia entertainment groups in the world, also coincidentally the owners of Epic Games and by extension Fortnite. It's not enough that the game was largely marketed at the Chinese audience as well as the Western audience. It's not enough that the developers had to walk on eggshells and rework certain parts of the game to avoid having the game be banned in China, including having the bomb defusal game mode be renamed in order to comply with China's strict video game violence policies. Now Riot wants to sell out even more to China by implementing questionable, almost borderline illegal spyware against her knowledge. After receiving a lot of backlash in the West from consumers, Riot did somewhat relent by allowing users to uninstall the anti-cheat system. However, what they did not make clear in this little apologetic post was that the minute the game begins installing a new update, it will also quietly reinstall the spyware-filled anti-cheat system as part of said update. At the end of the day, Valorant feels half-baked. It feels like a game that never fully made it past the proof-of-concept prototype stage. At launch, it feels like one of those private NDA-protected closed pre-alphas a developer does far ahead of launch to gather feedback for the full eventual game. The excitement for Valorant prior to its launch shows that there is interest in a more hardcore hero shooter game, yet sadly it seems evident that Valorant itself could not deliver on its own hype. The idea of Valorant, ironically, is more popular than Valorant itself. I have no regrets whatsoever about giving Valorant a 4 out of 10. It is a major disappointment, and that is saying something, coming from someone like me who wasn't at all that hyped about it in the first place. I had no lofty expectations going into the game, I didn't have any negative expectations going into it, I had 0 expectations, and I still came away disappointed. You know you as a game failed when a player like me, who goes in expecting it to be passable at best, still manages to walk away disappointed. Given the rather dismal quality of Valorant, plus other factors like its invasive and useless anti-cheat system, which also doubles as an almost virus-like Chinese spyware software, I actively recommend not downloading this game. There will be other similar hardcore hero shooters in the future, I have no doubt. Whenever one game hits it off big, others follow. Valorant clung to the coattails of Overwatch and CSGO, and I'm sure one day soon other games will emulate Valorant itself. Although hopefully they will learn from Valorant's mistakes and make their own games a tiny bit more functional and a lot less derivative in formula. One can only hope. I don't know whether Riot Games will be able to save this sinking ship, given the amount of work involving multiple map layout redesigns, a complete art overhaul, and the extensive amount of rebalancing, not to mention completely reworking their anti-cheat system to actually be able to do what it's supposed to do, and nothing more. I just don't see Valorant going through with all this. My best guess is they'll leave this game on life support for a while and then quietly pull the plug once people's anger have burned away and its players have moved on to other games. In the meantime, they'll probably just focus their attention on making small bug fixes here or there, and just milk the game for what money they can get from it until it dries up, in an attempt to recoup some of their losses. On that note, that's where I'm going to wrap it up for today. I know this video is a little bit shorter than my usual runtime, but there just isn't that much to talk about. It's a pretty lousy game, and I'm not going to artificially waste your time by prolonging this video another 5 minutes beating you over the head about how explicitly lousy it is. If you enjoyed this video, probably more than you will enjoy the game, do consider subscribing and hitting the bell to get notified when I upload new review videos. I upload at least once every other week, so look forward to a new review video sometime soon. Also, let me know in the comments what you think of Valorant. Did you play it? If so, what was your takeaway from it? And if you didn't play it, tell me, are you still considering playing it? I'm honestly curious. At any rate, this is WarriorDan signing out. Stay awesome everybody, and peace out.